I completed my study on the impact of perceived relationships on at-risk students' academic achievement in algebra. The purpose of my study was to investigate if a relationship existed between a student who's considered to be at risk of dropping out of high school's perceived relationship with his Algebra 1 teacher and that student's academic performance in Algebra 1. A lot of the literature and the research that I had read looked at the impact of relationships on students and how important a relationship is, a positive relationship is, to correlate to higher academic performance for students, but it didn't really specifically look at risk students. I'd also looked at a number of articles that had talked about the importance of Algebra 1 to a student's success in high school. And how if a student successfully completes Algebra 1 during their freshman year, how they have a much higher chance of completing high school and getting their high school diploma. If a student does not successfully complete Algebra 1 during the ninth grade, they have a 36% of those students graduate from high school. So Algebra 1 is extremely important to a student's success in high school. So I kind of wanted to put the two things together to see how if a relationship existed between a student's perceived relationship with their teacher, Algebra 1 teacher, and that student's academic performance in algebra. So specifically looking at math. I also wanted to look at it from the student's perspective because the majority of the research I had read looked at it from the teacher's perspective. I had 6 research questions that kind of focused on two variables. They looked at the perceived level of student-teacher connectedness and the perceived level of student-teacher anxiety. The first research question looked at, is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher connectedness and the student's performance on their STAR Algebra 1 test? The second research question looks at, is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher anxiety and the student's performance on that STAR Algebra 1 test? Research questions 3 and 4 deal with the student's attendance. Some of the research I had read said that if a student had a good relationship with their teacher, it correlated to higher attendance in that class. And so I wanted to look at, is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher connectedness and the student's attendance in their Algebra 1 class? I also wanted to look at is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher anxiety and the student's attendance in Algebra 1. Research questions 5 and 6 look at kind of the same things as research questions 1 and 2, but it controls for attendance. We know that at-risk students oftentimes have a higher number of absences, and so I kind of wanted to remove that variable. And so research question 5 looks at, is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher connectedness and the student's performance on Algebra 1, on their STAR Algebra 1 test when controlling for attendance? Research question 6 looks at, is there a relationship between the perceived level of student-teacher anxiety and that student's performance on their STAR Algebra 1 test when controlling for attendance? So kind of removing that variable. I used a correlational study as my research design. I randomly selected 138 students who were considered to be at risk of dropping out of high school from 3 high schools that were in the same district. I did use the student-instructor relationship scale by Creasy, Jarvis, and Knapsick. I got permission from the authors to make minor adjustments to the scale. So I held a focus group before I completed my study of at-risk students and asked them to read through it. And the only change that we made was we did end up calling it the student-teacher relationship scale because students related more to the word teacher instead of instructor. Students were given the survey during second period, and then their STAR end of course data and attendance data were pulled and compiled in SPSS. I did find that a small positive relationship existed between how connected a student felt to their Algebra 1 teacher and that student's performance on the STAR Algebra 1 end of course. The relationship did exist, but attendance did not appear to be related. So it supported previous research that suggested if a student felt connected to their Algebra 1 teacher, that it had a positive impact on that student's academic performance. I did not find a relationship between students' perceived level of anxiety about their relationship with their Algebra 1 teacher and that student's performance on the STAR Algebra 1 end of course, or the student's attendance in Algebra 1. That was kind of inconsistent with previous research that said that if a student felt connected or not anxious about their relationship, that attendance improved. And the implications for practice are basically that schools need to make sure that they provide Algebra 1 teachers who are able to cultivate strong relationships and connections with students, and that it's really important to focus on that.